Sayın Başkan, Sayın Genel Sekreter,
His Excellency, Mr. President, Honorable Secretary General, distinguished heads of states and governments, esteemed delegates, I have the honor to greet you personally and on behalf of my country and my people. At the onset, I would like to thank His Excellency Lajčák for his successful work over the past year as the President of the 72nd session of the United Nations General Assembly. I also would like to congratulate Mrs. Espinosa, who has taken over the presidency of the General Assembly. I hope and pray that the session of the General Assembly this year will avail an opportunity to bring all that is best to the people of the entire world. Esteemed delegates, we are holding this meeting on the 100th anniversary of the end of the First World War. The League of Nations, which was founded after the war, was immediately replaced by the United Nations in the aftermath of the Second World War. Undoubtedly, the United Nations, over its 73 years of history, had carried out enormous endeavors and accomplishing many achievements of a great extent. However, it is also a fact that we need to admit that in time, the United Nations moved away from the capacity to meet the expectations of humanity for peace and welfare. In particular, the Security Council has taken such a form that it started serving the interests of its 5 permanent seat holders at the Security Council with veto rights, but standing idle to the oppressions in the other parts of the world. The massacres in Bosnia, Rwanda, Somalia, recently in Myanmar, and in Palestine, as we speak, have all taken place before the eyes of the United Nations Security Council. Those who remained silent against the oppression of the Palestinians, who reduced the humanitarian assistance for them, are only increasing the courage of the oppressors. Even if the whole world turns its back, we, as Turkey, will continue to be on the side of the oppressed Palestinians and will protect the historical and legal status of our first Qibla, which is Jerusalem. Unfortunately, in many parts of the world, every day, we confront the scenes of ethnic cleansing and mass slaughter that none of us would wish to see. And likewise, from health to education, from food to culture, there is a high state of dissatisfaction in terms of the whole work undertaken by this huge organization. We don't wish to see such an important structure turning into an organization with a constant reputation for failure and complaints. Therefore, on every occasion, we underline that there needs to be a comprehensive reform in the structure and functioning of the United Nations, particularly at the Security Council. We believe when we say the world is greater than 5, we are becoming the voice of the common conscience of the entire human race. The world is not the world of the times of the Second World War, neither the aftermath. We have representatives from 194 countries under this roof. And why 194 countries cannot be represented at the Security Council? Why shouldn't they, in a rotational manner, have their permanent seats at the Security Council? We have only 5 permanent seat holders at the Security Council, and the remainders are just temporary, with no power whatsoever. Confining the reform of the United Nations to the budget will never contribute to the settlement of the real problems, nor will it make anybody happy nor content. There is a need for increasing the efficiency of this organization, which I deem to be very important for the future of the world. In fundamental areas of social, equality, development, and security, we need many, many reforms to undertake. Esteemed delegates, as Turkey, when we look at the world, beginning with our own geography, we see there are many important tasks to be undertaken by the United Nations. In our understanding, justice is above all, and it will bring order, salvation, and happiness to the entire world. In our civilization, we refer to a phenomenon as the circle of justice that bases itself on a correct establishment and management of relations between the society, law, state, the power of the state, economy, and justice. The links of this circle are intertwined, but however, these links are shattered to bits, regardless of where you go in the world today. This is why our world today is entrapped by political, social, and economic instabilities and is constantly suffering. To enable a peaceful and secure future for all, we have a duty to succeed in the humankind struggle, starting with the search for justice, ending with the establishment of such a justice. Today, when the assets of the wealthiest 62 people in the world amount to the assets of the half of the world's population of 3.6 billion people, this means that there is a significant problem that we need to do something about. 821 million people go to bed hungry every night, but at the same time, more than 672 million people have been diagnosed with obesity, and there's a problem with that. 258 million people across the world are hitting the road searching for better conditions to live and survive, and 68 million on a global scale have been displaced, pointing out to yet another outstanding problem that we need to do something about. There's a problem when the early child mortality likelihood of a baby born in Africa is 9 times greater than that of a baby born here. The famous Islamic philosopher Rumi started shining a beacon from the city of Konya in the heartland of Anatolia in order to enlighten all the souls across the world. Once said the following: justice means bestowing things in its proper place, meaning giving someone what he or she needs or desires. Let us establish a global administration system that will serve as a shield to protect the oppressed, the victimized, and to lend a helping hand to the hungry and the unsheltered, which will bring hope to the future generations. Everything that we deliver over this podium, all the analyses and all the proposals that we come up with, will only make sense if we can put them into action. Again, according to the philosopher Rumi, an oppressor is the one who does not fulfill their duties vis-à-vis the humanity. If we want to make the United Nations a source of justice instead of cruelty, we have to dedicate ourselves more fully to the tasks bestowed upon us. Esteemed delegates, Turkey is sustaining its efforts towards a fairer world through its global humanitarian diplomacy. Inside our borders, we are currently hosting 4 million refugees, 3.5 million of which are coming from Syria. This is unprecedented on a global scale, and they have access to all forms of services that one could ever need. We have spent about $32 billion for the care of the refugees until so far as the Republic of Turkey. Furthermore, in cities such as Jarablus, Al-Rai, and Afrin in Syria that we have previously secured, we have provided humanitarian aid to millions of people in need, just like the de-escalation zones that have recently been declared in the city of Idlib. The number of Syrian students attending school in Turkey is well above 600,000. Refugees in our country have access to all the healthcare services free of charge, just like any other Turkish citizen. In addition, we attend to all of the needs of the refugees that are in the Turkish protection centers. However, so far, we have only received $600 million from international organizations, and we have received only 1.7 billion euros from the EU, which is not going directly into the Turkish budget, but instead these funds are directly allocated to the NGOs working for the refugees. The European Union previously pledged 3 billion euros to be allocated to Turkey, but it's now subject to projects. We continue providing our services to refugees every day without any conditions, without any interruptions whatsoever. We expect more generous and flexible support to Turkey, especially by the EU, which has prevented a large refugee influx to spill over elsewhere in the world, foremost to Europe, thanks to the opportunities it has provided for the refugees. Furthermore, we are providing significant humanitarian development aid in all parts of the world, let alone the refugees beyond and within our borders. As of this year, Turkey ranks 6th in the world in terms of total development aid and 1st in humanitarian assistance. Turkey ranks among the top donors in terms of development and humanitarian aid, as we are the 17th largest economy on a global scale, and our commitment is a strong expression of how much significance we attach to humanitarian aid and helping those in need. As noted by the General Assembly's call for this year, our world needs global leadership and joint responsibility more than ever for a peaceful, equitable, and sustainable societies. Turkey has contributed substantial efforts in this direction within the United Nations. The Mediation for Peace initiative that we had launched with Finland in 2010 is now being supported by Friends of Mediation Group consisting of 56 member states. We have also taken serious steps in this direction forward within the Organization of the Islamic Cooperation, i.e. OIC, of which we are currently the term president. The Alliance of Civilizations initiative we have launched with Spain has become a United Nations initiative with the participation of 146 members. In helping Somalia, which is struggling with hunger to get back on its feet, we are currently implementing a development program that I believe will be exemplary for the rest of the world. And to help millions of innocent people in Arakan, which is miles away from our country, we have mobilized all of our means and all of our capabilities. We have exerted sincere efforts to resolve the Gulf crisis. In Iraq, we are encouraging all parties to make efforts for the common future of the country. And in terms of racism, xenophobia, and Islamophobia, we strive to prevent negativities in various parts of the world from emerging, especially in Europe. We have also adopted an active stance in response to the developments taking place in Syria, which has now become a place where the majority of the countries in the world export the radical groups residing within their borders. By means of both our support to the Geneva and Astana processes and the de-escalation zones that were established, we continue to establish peace and stability in Syria, and we're trying to make Syria a peaceful country once again. By clearing Jarablus and Al-Rai regions from ISIS presence and Afrin region from the PKK, PYD, and YPG terrorist organization presence, we have turned an area of more than 4,000 square kilometers into a safe and a peaceful place for millions of Syrians. Quite recently, we have signed an agreement with Russia, which is called the Sochi Agreement. We have prevented the regime's bloody assaults against the de-escalation areas in the Idlib province, where 3.5 million civilians live. By preventing a repetition of massacres carried out previously in Aleppo, in Hama, Homs, Dara, and Eastern Ghouta, we believe that Turkey cleared the way for peace and political solution in Syria, especially in the Idlib province. Our goal is to clear the Syrian territory all the way from Manbij to the Iraqi border from terrorist presence. I hereby call upon all the parties to support a just and a sustainable political solution in Syria with a constructive approach. We wish to see a principled approach against all terrorist organizations. Those who equip terrorists with tens of thousands of trucks and thousands of cargo planes loaded with arms and ammunition for the sake of their tactical interests will most definitely feel sorrow and regret in the future for having done so. Supporting terrorist organizations and closing borders to refugees, all the while putting the entire burden on a few countries like Turkey, would not give you a more secure and a prosperous future. Right on the contrary, issues deflected in such a way will reach a point where one day the measures at hand will fall short of overcoming them. So let us contribute more sincere and constructive efforts for solutions in current dispute regions such as Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Libya, Afghanistan, and Ukraine, as well as potential ones including the Balkans, Caucasus, North Africa, Central Africa, the Gulf, and Eastern Mediterranean. Please do not forget, if we cannot create a minimum level of peace and prosperity for all over the world, no one can live safely within their own borders. Esteemed delegates, all terrorist organizations Not all terrorist organizations obtain their sole power from their armed actions. Some of them use more complex, more covert, and more deceptive methods. The Fethullahist terrorist organization, also known as FETÖ, attempted a coup on the night of July the 15th in 2016, and at the end, 251 Turkish civilians were martyred, and more than 2,193 civilians were wounded. And that is the sort of a terrorist organization that I was previously referring to. This terrorist organization is hiding behind glossy concepts such as education, welfare, and dialogue, and it continues its operations as NGOs or businesses. The leader of this terrorist organization is currently living in Pennsylvania on a land of more than 400 acres in a very well-off fashion. The terrorist organization has been growing and developing through deception for the last 4 decades in Turkey, and we have seen its true face when the terrorists felt that they became powerful enough to undertake failed coups. They initiated consecutive coup attempts, first with their operatives that had infiltrated the police and the judiciary in Turkey, and then with their agents in the armed forces. With the economic and bureaucratic power that they have harnessed over time, this terrorist organization has attempted to take control of politics, society, and the state itself. But thanks to the support of our people, and thanks to our resolute fight against the Fethullahists in the last 5 years, we have eliminated the majority of Fethullahists in our country. We now see that this terrorist organization is carried out similar activities across the globe. We are warning many of our friendly countries around the world and demanding the extradition of the terrorists hiding within their borders. However, some of our friendly countries are shying away from extraditing the terrorists. But the price to be paid at the end for such a failure will be quite hefty. The Fethullahist terrorist organization in the United States is generating somewhere between $700 and $800 million through their charter schools located in different states of the country. Of course, this figure does not include the income generated through commercial institutions involved in all sorts of money laundering activities and other structures with secret agendas, which appear to be NGOs, of course. I'm hurt. That's why I'm frankly warning the friendly countries of Turkey all around the world. I invite you to mobilize your efforts in order to fight Fethullahist presence in your countries. We must show the same solidarity that we have shown regarding armed terrorist organizations and bloodthirsty regimes, also towards this insidious gang as well. We are ready to share our experiences and the information we have amassed on this issue with you and with any country that is willing to forge a closer cooperation with us. Esteemed delegates, trade wars have harmed humanity in every age, and we are on the brink of yet another period that we fear again. None of us can remain silent to the arbitrary cancellation of commercial agreements, the spreading prevalence of protectionism, and the use of economic sanctions as weapons, because the negative effects of these twisted developments will eventually affect all countries. We must all work together to prevent damage to the world trade regime as a result of such unilateral decisions in the form of sanctions. This is a period where we need to work to achieve the United Nations 2030 Sustainable Development Goals. And in this time, nobody wants the world to experience a new economic rupture. It's very easy to create chaos, but it's difficult to re-establish order. And today, unfortunately, some countries are persistently trying to create chaos. There's no bigger danger than a world order that has lost mercy, conscience, truth, and hope. And that is the danger that we're facing now. Turkey has always been in favor of both free trade and free circulation of persons, along with goods. Every regression in this aspect will have the negative repercussions that will be hard to erase for generations to come. Furthermore, the fact that this approach is brought up with a rhetoric of threat, force, and by entirely disregarding the history of bilateral relations, disappoints us even more. We are in favor of solving our problems through constructive dialogue on equal terms. We expect responsible action from all of our friends around the world. We have effective, harmonious, and constructive cooperation with our counterparts on international platforms such as the WTO, G20, and OIC, along with the EU, in the form of customs union. As Turkey, we always express that we are in support of a win-win scenario when all of our friends that we do business with around the world are concerned. Our approach is very sincere and obvious. That's why we deem allegations and pressures against our country unfair. We believe that, together with the countries and the institutions sharing our perspective, we can surmount this political and economic chaos that the world is being pulled into. We are looking forward to receiving your support in this aspect. And without further ado, I'd like to share with you two additional remarks. First, we believe that there is a need for the establishment of an agency within the UN for the youth, as youth ensures the sustainability of our future. As Turkey, we propose the establishment of a United Nations Youth Organization as soon as possible and suggest that Istanbul, one of the symbolic cities of the world history, to become its headquarters. We can allocate a youth center, which is currently being built in Istanbul, to this organization. Secondly, in 2005, we have hosted World Aging Summit in Turkey for the first time. And then 2019 was designated as the International Year of the Elderly. In this respect, the United Nations International Agency for the Elderly is being established in Istanbul. And third, World Assembly for Elderly will take place in Istanbul. That's why I would like to cordially invite you to attend this summit, which will be held in Istanbul on December the 10th of this year. Once again, I wish that the 73rd General Assembly will yield successful results. On behalf of myself and my country, I salute with respect and wholeheartedly all of the countries and peoples represented here in this common Parliament of Humanity. Thank you, and may you prevail in peace and health.